If on a cold night you saw a black man clutching a bag of flour and hurrying along the sidewalk, what would cross your mind? A father rushing home to bake his daughter a birthday cake? Or a potential threat worth calling the police over? Detroit, 10:38 p.m., Thursday night. The air sliced through the skin. Malcolm Harris pulled up the collar of his faded hoodie, his rough hands tightly gripping a brown paper bag that contained nothing but a bag of gold medal flour, his daughter Lila's favorite. She was 5 years old. He had just finished his night shift at the docks, sweat still damp on his neck, jeans dusty, shoes soaked, but his eyes gleamed with excitement. She'll love the strawberry cake this time, he thought, a gentle smile forming on his lips. In a tiny apartment in the slums on the east side of the city, Lila was scribbling on a piece of cardboard that read, "Happy birthday, Daddy's girl." A sweet girl with curly hair, her face smudged with marker ink, her eyes glowing with anticipation. "Daddy's coming home soon. The cake will smell so good, with strawberries too," she told her teddy bear with the torn ear. 2 blocks away, a white patrol car sat quietly under a flickering streetlight. Inside were 2 white officers, Rick Dalton, who judged by instinct rather than reason, and Johnny Blake, a man who smirked at everything except human pain. They were killing time scanning passers-by through binoculars. Rick glanced at Malcolm and frowned. "That guy looks off." Hoodie pulled up, carrying something. "What do you think?" Johnny sneered, his voice cold. "Flour? What's he need flour for this late at night? Bet it's something hot." Rick didn't need any more reason, no evidence, no conscience. Headlights turned on. The engine roared. A siren tore through the freezing night. Malcolm flinched. Before he could react, the high beams hit him straight in the eyes, blinding him. "Hands on your head! Get on your knees! Drop the bag now!" Rick screamed like he was arresting an armed robber. Malcolm was bewildered, took a step back. "What's going on? I just bought flour. For my daughter, her birthday is tomorrow." But the explanation of a black man was worth nothing in eyes filled with prejudice. Rick said nothing more, stepped forward and kicked Malcolm in the knee, sending him collapsing to the street. Johnny rushed in, slammed his head onto the wet sidewalk, and handcuffed him like capturing a wild animal. The paper bag tore open, and flour scattered across the street corner like snowfall in the middle of the night. But no one laughed. No one saw any beauty in it, only pure white humiliation that stung bitterly. "Please, check the cameras. I didn't do anything wrong," Malcolm pleaded through sobs, blood dripping from his lip mixing with the flour. Rick leaned down and whispered into his ear with a cruel grin. "So this is flour? Yeah? Let's test if it makes cake." An old lady behind the bakery window nearby saw everything. She almost opened the door, then froze. A middle-aged man at the gas station across the street watched Malcolm being slammed to the ground. He pulled out his phone, then slid it back into his pocket. No recording, no call, no words. Lights in windows above quietly turned off. No one dared speak. No one dared step forward. That silence was more deafening than the siren, more painful than the boot to his face. Back at home, Lila had already preheated the oven. She lined up fresh strawberries on the tray, humming her birthday song to herself. "Is Daddy home yet, Mommy?" "Not yet. Maybe he went to get more whipped cream. But he promised to be back before I fall asleep." She stayed up until nearly 1 a.m. The oven grew cold. The strawberries wilted. The teddy bear was placed in the chair next to her. Lila hugged it tight, her eyes slowly filling with tears. At the police station, Malcolm sat in a freezing holding cell. His shirt was torn, dried blood at his lip, wrist bruised. On the desk lay a cold incident report. Suspect arrested for suspicious behavior, suspected of possession of illegal substances, resisted law enforcement. No one checked the cameras. No one checked the flour bag. At the same time, another black man walked into the 12th Police Precinct. The new chief, Darius King, the first black man to ever hold this position in Detroit's history. He walked through the hallway bathed in pale fluorescent light, with deep eyes and a faint smile. In his hand was the case file of Malcolm Harris. One line made him pause. Seized evidence. 1 bag of premium flour, gold medal brand. Darius's eyes darkened. He looked up and said, "Prepare the interrogation room. I want to see Malcolm Harris, right now." When the entire city turned its back, only two people remained. One forgotten, one just appointed. What they didn't know was that this conversation would shake the entire police department. Interrogation Room 3. The flickering fluorescent light above looked like it could go out at any second, casting a dim and cold illumination that made the space feel heavy and stifling. No clock, no windows, just a freezing metal table, two old plastic chairs, and a camera silently recording. Malcolm Harris sat with his head lowered, one cheek swollen and bruised like a plum, his lip torn, his shirt smeared with white powder like someone who had just walked out of a bakery. But no one asked if he needed water, or a doctor, or even an apology. No one at all. A black man, unarmed, arrested on suspicion of transporting illegal substances, which in his case was a bag of flour he had bought to bake his daughter's birthday cake. No one in the neighborhood spoke out. No one opened their mouth to intervene. Not a single empathetic look when he was slammed to the ground, handcuffed in front of a familiar corner store like a known drug dealer. He didn't scream, didn't lash out, didn't resist. He only asked one question very quietly, voice trembling. Is there anyone who can help me?" Silence. The interrogation room door opened. The sound of leather shoes echoed steadily on the tile floor. Darius King, the newly appointed district police chief, stepped in. He wasn't followed by a team. No gleaming nameplate, no badge on his chest. Just a tall black man with salt and pepper hair, a dark, well-fitted suit, his tie slightly loosened, holding a thick file and a look in his eyes that was different. He looked at Malcolm not like a suspect, but like a fellow human being. Darius didn't sit immediately. He stood in the doorway and looked at Malcolm for a long time. There was no judgment in his gaze, no pity, just a heavy silence. "You're Malcolm Harris, right?" His voice was deep, calm, not threatening. Malcolm didn't respond right away. His eyes still pointed to the floor, shoulders hunched from instinctive self-preservation, a reflex built over years of being doubted, humiliated, and thrown down like so many other black men in this city. Darius sat down and gently placed the file on the table. He didn't tap the table, didn't press with questions, just looked. "You know, when I was 19, a cop once pointed a gun at my head because I mistakenly left a bottle of water in my jacket pocket as I walked out of a store. I stood still. I tried to smile, but my hands were shaking like I was holding a live bomb." Malcolm looked up, for the first time, his eyes no longer lost. He began to see the man in front of him, not as a police officer, but as someone who had stood on the same side. "I wasn't the first, and you won't be the last." Darius spoke slowly, each word carrying weight. "The real question is, how many of us have to stay silent just to stay alive? How many innocent people have been boxed in just because of skin color, because they wore a hoodie, because they stood on the wrong street corner? And this time I won't stay silent." Malcolm blinked. He couldn't believe it. "So, now what?" he asked in a hoarse voice. "You all gonna apologize with a birthday cake that has handcuffs on it?" Darius smiled. He didn't deny it. He opened the file, pulled out a sealed envelope lab test results. 100% pure starch, no drugs, no illegal substances, no criminal offense. Just flour. Malcolm clenched his fists. His breathing grew rapid, not out of anger, but out of humiliation. I just wanted to bake a cake. My daughter's turning 7. She called me while I was being pinned to the sidewalk. She asked, "Daddy, chocolate or pink strawberry cream?" I couldn't answer because I was eating concrete. Malcolm's voice broke. Darius stood up. His eyes sharpened. His voice turned firm as steel. "I will suspend the 2 officers who assaulted you. I will bring the truth to the media, and if the system won't apologize to you, then I will." He extended his hand, a handshake not out of procedure, but out of conviction. Malcolm looked at that hand, hesitated, then placed his own into it. 2 black men, one in custody, one newly in charge. For the first time, no one looked at them like criminals. No one turned away. There were just two human beings standing firm, refusing to let silence swallow justice. Sometimes to protect an innocent man, you must be ready to lose yourself. Quoted from Darius King, newly appointed Chief of Police, 06:58 a.m. Press conference room, City Police Headquarters. The air was as suffocating as if the entire room was suppressing an unspoken fury on the verge of explosion. The flashes from cameras flickered like lightning before an incoming storm. At the podium, Darius King, the first black man to hold the position of chief in this city in 50 years, stepped up with a calm face, but eyes that could ignite fire. His hand gripped the microphone tightly. "I stand here as someone entrusted with justice, but today I speak as a father, a son, and a black man who knows the feeling of being suspected just because of the color of his skin." The room fell silent. Malcolm Harris is not a criminal. He was not carrying drugs. What was in his bag was just a bag of flour. The room erupted. Camera shutters snapped wildly. Murmurs filled the air. Some faces showed astonishment. Some nodded in agreement, and others wore sharp, cold skepticism. Darius continued, unwavering. The two officers involved in the arrest, Rodney Miller and Troy Banks, used excessive force without clear evidence. They will be suspended pending investigation, and I take full responsibility for this decision. In the surveillance room, Rodney Miller stood frozen in front of the live broadcast screen. He slowly chewed a piece of gum, eyes narrowing. Beside him, Troy Banks cracked his knuckles. This new chief is playing the justice card. Thinks he's the second coming of Martin Luther King, Rodney sneered. Troy took a drag from his cigarette. No one keeps their chair when they go against the brothers in blue, especially when that brotherhood is the entire police department. They exchanged a look. No more words needed. The counterattack had already begun to take shape. Outside the police headquarters, Malcolm Harris was released. His face was still swollen, his lip bloody. Bruises bloomed across his jaw. His clothes were wrinkled and stained, but his steps were steady like a man walking away from hell. Just as he crossed the gate, a little voice cried out, "Dad!" Lily ran to him. She threw her arms around him, almost dropping the birthday cake in her hands. The cake was a bit lopsided, the candles tilted, but Lily's eyes sparkled like stars. "I waited 2 whole days for you to blow out the candles with me." Malcolm dropped to his knees and embraced his daughter. Silently, no words, only tears rolling down onto her small shoulders. That evening in Darius King's office, he stared at a file. A photo of Malcolm at the time of arrest, hands cuffed, blood dripping from his nose onto the pavement like ink spreading across paper. The doorbell rang softly. Someone had quietly slipped a brown envelope under his door. Darius picked it up. Inside was a photo of his wife taking their son to school. On the back, a handwritten note in red ink read, "You have a beautiful family. Keep it safe, and remember, heroes die young." Darius paused for a moment, then he chuckled quietly, though his eyes burned with fire. He picked up a pen and wrote underneath, "If I must trade safety to keep this seat, then I'll burn this chair down with the ones trying to hold it." But pressure was building. An emergency meeting was held the following morning. Several senior officers criticized Darius's decision as impulsive. They said he had undermined trust in the force, that the public would now see the police as villains. Darius didn't explode. He simply looked at each of them, tapped his fingers slowly on the table, and said calmly, "They think that because we've shown them exactly that. If that makes you feel ashamed, then maybe you should start changing instead of hiding." When a black man is taken down, the target is not just him, but the entire community they want to see kneel. Quoted from Chief Darius King, moments before he was suspended. Monday, 6:12 a.m. A strange video clip was leaked from an anonymous account. In the video, Malcolm Harris was seen struggling with a white officer, screaming as if he had lost control, then suddenly punching the officer in the chest. The person filming shouted, "He's resisting arrest! Get that on tape! Get that on tape!" Immediately, news outlets exploded with headlines. "Aggressive black man, new police chief accused of covering up misconduct. Malcolm Harris, Victim or perpetrator? Truth twisted or a campaign against the police force? And just like that, Malcolm was transformed from a man to be pitied into a symbol of deceit. A media crisis had been seeded, and not a single voice rose to defend him. At Detroit Central Police Headquarters, Chief Darius King watched the actual footage from the bakery's security camera. In the video, Malcolm walked out with a bag of flour in hand. Officer Rodney approached without greeting, without presenting a warrant, and immediately slammed Malcolm into the wall. When Malcolm asked what was going on, Rodney shouted, "You bastard, this is drugs, isn't it?" And then, Rodney pulled a small white bag from his own jacket pocket and stuffed it into Malcolm's bag. Darius stared at the screen, his fists clenched, veins bulging. This was clearly a setup. He intended to call a press conference. But before he could act, he received the order of suspension. The reason? Abuse of power to protect a suspect, biased behavior, ethical misconduct. Darius said nothing. He stood silently, eyes fixed on the portrait of the previous police chief, a white man who had once looked him straight in the eye and said, "A black man may wear the badge, but to the system, he'll always be a suspect." In the small street where Malcolm lived, the atmosphere had completely changed. The cashier at the local store, who used to greet Malcolm by name, now wouldn't even make eye contact. Neighbors quietly shut their gates when he stepped outside. The children who used to play in his front yard now avoided Lily, Malcolm's daughter. One day, Lily came home with red eyes. She sniffled. "Daddy, at school today, they called me the girl whose dad sells drugs." Malcolm lowered his head. He was a father, a man, a baker. But now society saw him as trash. That night, at Darius's small apartment, while he was cleaning out his office, a plain envelope was slid under his door. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. "I've seen enough. Here's the original footage. Be careful." Darius plugged the USB into his laptop. The video appeared. This time, it was the unedited footage from the dash cam of the patrol vehicle near the scene. It clearly showed Rodney planting evidence. Captured his words, "Every black guy in this neighborhood is tied to something. One more won't matter to anyone." In the voice of another officer nearby, who didn't intervene but chuckled. Darius knew he now had the proof to flip the game. But just then, he heard unfamiliar footsteps in the hallway and someone whispering on the phone. "We need to clean this up fast before he digs deeper." Darius called a young officer who had been on duty the night Malcolm was arrested. His name was Brian Scott, a white rookie new to the force. "You saw everything, Brian? I know it. You're the only one not yet corrupted by this system. They'll silence me if I speak." Brian's voice trembled. "They'll threaten my mom. You understand? They could fabricate charges and have me jailed for leaking internal evidence." Darius replied, "You can stay silent, or you can do what's right, and I will protect you." On the other end, Brian didn't respond immediately. There was a long, breathless pause. Then he whispered, "I need time, but I'll do what's right." Not everyone can scream into the darkness, but sometimes a whisper from the heart is enough to shake an entire city. Early that morning, sunlight slipped through the blinds of a small old house at the end of Maple Street. Once filled with laughter, it now felt cold and heavy. Inside, 7-year-old Lily Harris sat curled up on the sofa, hugging her worn-out teddy bear named Mr. Flower. On the table sat a silver-pink party hat held together with bits of tape. Next to it was an empty plate where, tonight, a chocolate cake her father Malcolm had promised to bake should have been placed. "Daddy said he'd just go buy flour and come right back. He never breaks his promises," Lily whispered, glancing at the clock on the wall. The hour hand had moved far past the promise. She didn't know that her father was being held in a cold detention cell, beaten and falsely charged with drug trafficking just for carrying a bag of white flour. Lily didn't understand the law. She only understood that today was her birthday and Daddy hadn't come home. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Lily quietly picked up some colored paper, chose her favorite purple marker, sat down on the floor, and began to write. Her childish handwriting was clumsy but heartbreakingly sincere. "My name is Lily. Today is my birthday. Daddy said he would bake me a cake, but now he's locked up. Daddy's not bad. He only bought flour. Please someone help my daddy come home. I promise to share the cake. I don't want anything else but him. Signed, Lily Harris, Class 2B, East Detroit Elementary School. She slipped the letter into a deflated birthday balloon. Then, with all the hope a child could hold, she released the balloon out the window. The wind carried it higher, drifting over the Detroit skyline. She watched until it was just a tiny speck in the sky. Across town, Officer Brian Scott hadn't slept all night. He was the only one who had witnessed the entire incident involving Malcolm, and he was the one who had secretly recorded video on the secondary camera inside the patrol car. Despite his superior, Rodney, having switched off the main dash cam, Brian knew that speaking out could cost him his job, even his future. But when he saw the news framing Malcolm as a drug dealer, saw Malcolm's bruised face, and his daughter just wanting her dad home to blow out the candles, his heart screamed. The truth can't be buried like this. He burned the video onto a disc, called the new chief, Darius King. I have what you need. That afternoon, a woman named Annabelle was walking her dog when she spotted a silver-pink balloon tangled in her front fence. She untangled it, curious, opened it, and read the letter. She stood silently for a long while. She couldn't hold back the tears. Immediately, she took a photo of the letter and posted it to Twitter with the caption, "This 7-year-old girl just wants her dad home to make her a birthday cake, but he was wrongfully arrested for carrying flour. We cannot stay silent." The post spread like wildfire. Within 6 hours, 300,000 shares. The hashtag #Justice for Malcolm reached top 3 nationwide. Celebrities like Zendaya, LeBron James, Chance the Rapper, and Trevor Noah began to speak out. No one should go to jail over birthday cake, but justice is worth the world standing up. That night, Lily sat on the front steps of her house. No candles, no cake, just the street lamp's glow and Mr. Flower in her arms. She whispered, "Daddy, if you can hear me, come home and blow out the candles. I promise I'll give you the bigger slice." Just then, the doorbell rang. Lily's mom opened the door in frozen shock. Outside stood a line of people from the neighborhood, each holding a bag of flour. The first was a Mexican uncle who said, "That day we stayed silent. We were scared. But today we want to say, Malcolm is not alone." Another handed Lily a small birthday cake from the bakery on the corner for the little princess and for a father treated unfairly. Lily smiled. She said nothing, just hugged the cake close and whispered in her heart, "Daddy, they're on our side now." When evil no longer wears a mask. Detroit, 1:42 a.m. Malcolm Harris's house was silent, as if the night itself held its breath. Outside the porch, light rain fell, forming a thin mist on the windows, as if the world too was trembling at what was about to happen. In the kitchen, the wall clock ticked slowly. Sandra was finishing up the leftover birthday cakes. It was the birthday of Emma, their 7-year-old daughter, celebrated in the most chaotic moment of their lives. Malcolm had fallen asleep on the sofa, one arm wrapped around Emma as if afraid that letting go would cause everything to vanish. Then came a faint pop outside the porch. 1, 2, 3, then silence. Emma opened her eyes. "Daddy, something's outside looking in." Malcolm woke up. Survival instinct kicked in immediately. 2 a.m., a shadow behind the window. Malcolm crept to the curtain and saw figures. 3, 4, then 5 men in black, hoods over their heads, gloves on, no badges, no identification. One held a gas canister, another carried a stun baton. They didn't need to speak. Their actions spoke for them. This wasn't a robbery, not a warning. This was a cleanup job, a silencing operation. Malcolm didn't have time to think. He locked the bedroom door, pushed Sandra and Emma inside. No crying, no noise, no matter what happens. He grabbed a kitchen knife, the only thing he had, then jammed a wooden chair against the front door. But he knew a wooden chair wouldn't stop tear gas grenades. At the same time, in another place, Chief Darius King sat in his office, his face weary but his eyes sharp as a blade. On the desk was a newly delivered file, the federal seal already broken. Inside were names of police personnel involved in the protection network of Ryan McCollins, a leaked patrol route diagram, and a photo of Deputy Chief Roland Vickers shaking hands with a stranger, the man behind a far-right militia group called the Clean Fold. Darius had just finished reading the first page when his private phone rang. It was Malcolm. His voice was tight, breathless. "They're here. They're wearing police gear. They've got tear gas and handguns." Darius said nothing more. He grabbed his Sig Sauer, strapped on his bulletproof vest, and got in the car. 2:11 a.m., Malcolm's house. A deafening explosion shattered the back door. Tear gas grenades flew into the living room. White smoke spread thickly. Sandra clutched her daughter in the wardrobe, coughing violently. Malcolm rushed out, covering his face with a wet towel, slashing toward the intruders with the kitchen knife. A baton struck his back, but he did not fall. One attacker sneered, "Don't need to kill him. Just make him disappear." But before the next blow landed, a burst of gunfire erupted. Darius's SUV screeched to a halt in the street. He jumped out, both hands holding his firearm, firing warning shots into the sky. "I am the chief of this city. Everyone down unless you want to die wearing your badge." The intruders didn't flinch. One of them laughed. "You may be the chief, but you're not the law." A bullet grazed Darius's ear. He collapsed behind a stone wall. At that moment, from the back of the house, a real uniformed officer appeared, gun raised. It was Officer Jamal Brooks, the only one left who still believed in Darius and stood against the rotten system. "We've got cameras, we've got proof, and we've got you. The people are behind you, Darius. No one wants to live in a city haunted by ghosts anymore." Jamal fired twice, hitting the attacker in the hand. Darius sprang up and together they brought down the rest. Malcolm carried his daughter, blood soaking through his shirt, his mouth burning from the smoke. Sandra trembled but helped her husband to the door. Backup police had arrived, this time under Darius's command, not Vickers's. All 5 attackers were captured alive. In their vehicle, police found a detailed plan titled Witness Elimination with 4 names listed, Malcolm at the top, a fake ID badge issued directly by Deputy Chief Vickers, and a patrol code note that read, "Do not interfere. Internal authorization." In the ambulance, Darius sat next to Malcolm, who was on oxygen. Emma had fallen asleep in her mother's arms, still mumbling, "Daddy, can we still make a birthday cake?" Malcolm laughed, even with blood on his lips. He nodded. "Of course, sweetie. We'll bake that cake. And next time, Chief Darius is having a slice too." Detroit, early morning. The sky hung gray as if clinging to a storm that had yet to pass. Inside the main hall of the Detroit City Police Department, camera lights flashed in all directions and reporters packed every corner. Outside, citizens gathered not out of curiosity, but in the fragile hope that today someone might dare to say what everyone had long known, yet no one had ever dared to speak aloud. Amid them all, he stepped forward. Darius King, the first black police chief in Detroit's history. No badge pinned to his chest, no escort at his back, just a man with eyes that had seen too much pain and a heart where hope had never fully died. "I didn't come here to be a hero. I came to tell a story, a true story." He began slowly, his voice as heavy as a drum beat echoing from deep within. "1 week ago, a black man named Malcolm Harris was brutally beaten in the street, all because he carried a bag of flour home. Officer Ryan McCollins, a man who had been accused of racial discrimination 7 times without ever facing consequence, was the one who did it." He paused. The entire room fell into complete silence. His face bore the marks of time, but his gaze never faltered. "When I tried to access the case files, I was warned. When I followed the trail in the system, my account was blocked. And when I started asking questions, I received an anonymous letter. If you're smart, stay silent." The spotlight hit him full on, but he didn't blink. That light was now a battlefront, and he stood in its center by choice. He pulled out a hard drive. No label, just a tiny device holding an entire world of rot inside. This contains an audio recording of a conversation between Deputy Chief Roland Vickers and a group of extremist militia leaders. They plan to assassinate Malcolm Harris and blame it on a civilian altercation. They also compiled a list of black voices to visually neutralize, and they have already begun. There was no need for police to storm in. Roland Vickers was sitting in the back row. He stood up on his own. His face turned pale, sweat streaming down his temples, as if he knew that the truth had reached the point of no return. Two security officers walked toward him. No one shouted, no one resisted. Everyone just watched, as if witnessing history being rewritten before their eyes. Elsewhere, in Detroit Mercy Hospital, in a dimly lit room, Malcolm Harris sat against the wall, bruises still visible. His daughter Emma sat beside him, eyes locked on the TV. When she saw Roland being handcuffed, she turned to her father and whispered, "So, we'll make the birthday cake late, right, Daddy?" Malcolm smiled gently. His eyes shimmered, but his voice was steady. "Yeah, and this time, I'll make it with my own hands. No more blood, no more pain." Back in the press room, a journalist raised a hand. "Do you think this action can change anything when the system is rotten from its roots?" Darius King answered without hesitation, "I don't need to change the whole system. I just need to crack it open, just enough for the light to get in. One person, one action, one moment. Sometimes that's all it takes to wake up an entire city." This wasn't just a press conference. It was a public indictment against silence. Darius King didn't choose to be a cop. He chose to be the one who lights the hallway in the dark. Malcolm Harris wasn't the main character. He was just one among thousands who had been mistaken, blamed, and silenced. But because of him, a general stepped out of line.